This is TWiT.
All right, my friends. Well, last week we talked a little bit about the LG V60 and just a quick refresher on the actually full name, LG V60 ThinQ. Is that how you say it?
ThinQ. I never know, so it's not just me.
It's technically ThinQ, but nobody should ever say that word.
So it's like ThinQ as in like thank you, thank you. I don't know. Thank you.
I think you. That's what they're going for. Yeah.
Nice.
I see what you did there.
There you go. So the V60
deserve the bell, but thank you.
The LG V60 ThinQ 5G. It's on sale in the US. A quick refresher: it's got a Snapdragon 865 with 5G. It's got 8 gig of RAM, 128 gig of storage, a headphone jack, all you people out there, and a micro SD card slot for all you old timers. 6.8-inch POLED display with dual screen attachment display. Starts at $799 in the US, $799. Andrew, you have the phone and you've been posting photos on Twitter. You've referenced it tonight so far. So what is the LG V60 like in real life?
It is wider and taller than the S20 Ultra, which we were just talking about being way too big, which is kind of crazy. I think you can't get past the size of this thing. So with a 6.8-inch display, it's just crazy. So it's 6.8 inches, but there's no curvature to it like the S20 Ultra. So you have pretty big bezels around the sides, and they don't do anything to hide them. And then from that point, it still has kind of this old school looking design a little bit. It's kind of Galaxy S9-ish, I guess you'd say. It's just very squared off on the sides, slab across the back. They're not doing anything to kind of make it feel svelte at all. So even without a case on, it's just really tough to wrap your hand around this. But of course, the upside is you're getting that massive display and you get a huge battery, 5,000 milliamp hours, same as the S20 Ultra. But you get all the extras too. So they really didn't cut anything back. LG has gone back and forth, just cutting things here and there, but they still give you really good stereo speakers. You have the headphone jack, like you said. You still have SD card slot, water resistance, and of course the giant battery. And that battery is giving me way better battery life than the S20 Ultra even at 60 hertz on the Ultra. This thing beats it. Like on the weekends when I'm just, spending a lot of time around the house, obviously on Wi-Fi, I'm going to bed with like 50% battery left, which is absolutely crazy on a modern smartphone that still has all the highest end specs. I think that the downside here is LG's software. It feels old. It feels like nobody's really gone over it with a fine-tooth comb and like spruced it up and modernized it a little bit. I think the best example of that is the launcher, where you can't pull down on the home screen to pull the notification shade down, which is just completely random. How do you not do that? The app drawer doesn't stay sorted alphabetically. Also, so you add a new app and it goes to the very end. It doesn't go.
I hate that approach. I hate that. It's the worst.
They let you do folders in the app drawer as well, and they get all messed up. And just everything looks very 2017-y, 2016-y. It feels very old. So that's kind of the problem. Is LG software feels old. It's already a month behind, almost 2 months behind now, on the security patches, and we know LG's history with software updates is a little sketchy. I think that's the big thing you're giving up because, I'm open to any other questions about it, of course, but I think the other thing I'd say is the cameras are actually pretty good this year, but you have no dedicated zoom lens and you have no OIS on the wide angle camera. So you're just basically getting a 64 megapixel camera that bins 4:1 to 16 megapixels and an ultra wide, and that's it. It takes good photos, but it's not doing anything fancy like Samsung or Google's doing in terms of processing or making the most of that sensor.
So you're saying their AI isn't necessarily up to snuff from a photography standpoint?
No, they're really not trying to do anything fancy. And I was talking to one of our video producers, Hayato, who also has one, is doing our video review. And we were saying we actually kind of like that it's not trying to do something that it can't. It really just does. It gives you a good balanced photo. It doesn't blow out all the colors. It doesn't have this issue that Samsung has with going way overboard on HDR and like putting halos around things with bright backgrounds and blue skies. Yeah. The real downside there is that it doesn't have the real sharp, fine detail that you get in Pixel photos or in Samsung photos. You zoom in and you see everything's a little muddy, a little soft. Yeah. But you can add some sharpness later. You can bring up the brightness and the saturation later if you want to. But in the case of Samsung, if you take that photo and it just chroma noises the crap out of some fine details because it tries to over sharpen them, you can't bring that detail back. So there is an argument for saying if you don't think your AI can process this and do a better job, just give them kind of a basic photo and let them go from there. And fundamentally, the photos are really good.
I'm of the camp that I was the person that automatically turned off the HDR plus feature in the Pixel camera app. I think that's what they just call it, Pixel camera, because I didn't necessarily want Google telling me to bring up the shadows in all of my images. Sometimes I wanted those dark shadows. So hearing something like this about the LG camera app is fine by me, but I get it that the masses are probably going to want something a little more popping and saturated the way Samsung does, even though it does have some of those other limitations.
Yeah, and look at what Samsung gives you is, it bumps up the highlights, it bumps up the shadows, and it bumps up the saturation. Like, it just gives you a brighter, poppy image that, isn't like reality whatsoever. But, that's kind of how people were going to edit it anyways. But I think that if LG tried to do the same thing, we would get worse photos than what it's offering right now by just giving you kind of this standard processing. Like, I just think of it as when you pull in a RAW into Lightroom or something like that and you just hit auto on it and you spit out a JPEG, like that's basically what it's giving you. And the fundamentals on the sensor are good enough that, you're getting something good. But like I said, the downside is no zoom camera. And so all you're doing is just digital zooming on this 64 megapixel sensor. So even 2x zoom is kind of sketchy. And everything else beyond that is just useless because you at those levels you really need processing and lots of AI assistance to make digital zoom look good, and they've got none of that.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about the dual screen thing? Have you been a fan of LG's approach to? We're not doing.
This might be biased in his response though. So hang on.
I have the attachment. It's just this giant case thing. Okay, so if you agree with this stance that you can, instead of doing a foldable or like something like Microsoft Duo where it's attached all the time, if you agree with this stance that you can add and remove a screen as you need it, it does about as well as it can do. It plugs in over USB-C. There's no extra battery, so it doesn't add any more weight than just a case and this panel. It's just a dead panel otherwise. It's the exact same panel as in the phone, so there's no issue with calibration or color balance or anything like that. It even has the same notch cutout at the top, even though there's no front-facing camera on that side, obviously. So it is perfectly mirrored, and the software does work as intended. You can span apps across the two, either vertically or horizontally, and you can run two separate apps however you want. And you can open and close on both screens. You can put, you can rotate it and put the second screen on the right or the left, top, bottom, doesn't matter. So it does work as intended. The problem is the size of the thing. This phone is already really big, and you add a second screen to it that adds another, 100 grams or something to it. And now it's unwieldy, it's heavy, and it makes it really hard to justify carrying the thing for the times when you're not using that screen. Of course, it folds over to the back. It's gone, it turns off and all that. But all the time that you're not using it, you're just lugging this massive thing around.
Yeah. Does the second screen have a notch as well? Victor, can you go back a photo?
Yeah. It has a notch and no because it is literally the same panel. They just pull 2 panels off the assembly line, and they, one could end up in the second screen, one could end up in the phone. And it is it is a really good panel. I'd say it's LG's best so far. It's not Samsung quality because nobody is, but it's pretty darn close. And the fact that you get an extra one, so it's at Verizon and AT&T, it's included. At T-Mobile, it's not. And so T-Mobile's $100 less. So you can value this thing at $100. There's no way they're making any money throwing the additional one in there for $100. It's got to cost them more than that in terms of all the overhead and everything. But that's why I'm recommending to people, we can cut to the chase, that like, if you want this thing, try to buy it at T-Mobile, because it's really worth it without the screen. Like, that's where the value shines on this thing, because we're talking about an $800 phone that in most respects is right there with the Galaxy S20 Plus, which is a $1,200 phone.
Wow. I gotta say, if this was an inch smaller, I would love that second screen idea as a case and all that sort of stuff. It just seems like it's a really interesting kind of use case and an interesting application. But the enormity of it seems to get in the way.
Yeah. The real problem there is that when they first introduced this, it was fully optional, and so nobody bought it, and so nobody used it. So it's kind of this thing where if they wanted anybody to try it, they had to put it in the box. And now, even if they've gotten to the point where 2 of the 3 carriers put it in the box, T-Mobile has a separate listing for the phone to buy it without. So, they understand that people care about $100 off more than they care about having this thing that they're kind of unsure about. When, like I said, the value is all about the main phone and what it can provide. And like, just let me buy the second screen separately if I want to. Don't overcharge or undercharge depending on whether you take it. I think it's neat, but I mean, this is not aged very well in the world of foldable phones that look really cool and futuristic. Like that photo right there, shows what you're dealing with.
Yeah, and just knowing, I shouldn't judge it, but knowing that it's like the same panel, but yet there's no camera there, it just kind of feels lazy. Yeah. Even though I realize it's probably a cost saving move. Allows them to get more of those display panels, at a lower cost by keeping it the same. But it's just kind of like,
I love that. I love it. It's eccentric. It's wacky. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's perfectly imperfect.
No. At the quarterly meeting, someone come in from the warehouse. Hey, boss, we got a whole bunch of these screens. What are we gonna do with these screens?
What are we gonna do? Let's put it on a separate screen that attaches to it.
Throw them in the box. Something. Do something.
Get rid of it. How do you not celebrate that? That's a wonderful thing. So
true. They're using the resources that they have. So
they're trying stuff. Yeah, I think that the problem is that they, at some level, they had to have a software engineer to handle all of this, a whole team, I'm sure, to handle all this moving apps around and attaching the second screen.
True.
If they would have taken that team and just rewritten their entire launcher from top to bottom,
right.
That's $100 worth of value right there, because I have to stare at the launcher every single day, no matter what.